Folks, welcome to an all new So Bad It's Good. This is your pal Ryan, and this is your Monday episode. I'm being told that it is a holiday, so I hope you have this off. I hope you are having such a great holiday that you aren't even listening to the show until Tuesday. How about that, huh? I'll be on Jeff Lewis this morning on Sirius at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so tune in. But I hope you guys had a fantastic weekend. We have a great show for you today. Sophie Ross is back with the Pop Culture Roundup, and you can feel free to skip to that right now. There's a timestamp, but I'm going to talk about a couple of things before then. We also had a fantastic Traders recap with Bergie was back, and he brought his girlfriend who he met on Love Island, Taylor Smith, and she was amazing. So check that out if you haven't. Those are just so much fun to do over the weekend. It doesn't even feel like work. But we also did Summer House recaps, Beverly Hills recaps. I mean, we've done. There's a lot of shows. So bad it's good right now. Also on the Patreon, Annabelle DeSisto came and joined us, and we recapped the first episode of Lisa Rinna and Harry Hamlin's new podcast. Let's Not Talk About the Husband is what the podcast is called, and we kind of went through that with what's the opposite of a fine tooth comb. We talked a lot about Lisa Rinna, so that's over on the Patreon. Hello, baddies, and yeah, that's it. So listen, it's a stressful time for all of us. I mean, it sometimes feels like the world is burning. That's not exactly what I mean when I say it's stressful. It's just right now it just feels like there's an overwhelming amount of television to watch. I keep talking about it. I always say, if I could have told my childhood self that one day you will be moderately paid to watch television, I would have been like, oh my God, you made it. But it is almost feeling too much to me. So tonight, I mean, this weekend, I've watched so many things revolving around Saturday Night Live, which we'll talk about in a second. But there are so many shows out there. Yellow Jackets season 3 premiered, so that's out now. You had a new episode of Severance, The Traitors, of course, everything on Bravo. You had the SNL 50, which we just said. Then Potomac Reunion was tonight. The new season of White Lotus was tonight. Love is Blind's new season dropped 6 episodes. I guess the Kardashians have a new season on Hulu. I missed that episode this week. What I'm probably forgetting 30 other things. New season of 90 Day Fiance premiered tonight on TLC. And then next Sunday, you have a premiere of the Baldwins, Alec Baldwin and Hilaria Baldwin's reality show. That'll be on TLC as well. The shows, they just keep coming. So I was not able to watch White Lotus yet or Yellow Jackets, but I did watch the Potomac Reunion. I just finished watching that right now. And it was interesting because they started off with the obvious about Karen Huger not being there, and she had these videotape messages. And it was sad and at times humorous in certain aspects, and especially how the women spoke about Karen, even though they did speak about her lovingly. Obviously, I think they were just kind of shocked to see that video of Karen at the DUI as much as we were. So that was happening, and then they kind of dove in. But me and Sophie talk about a storyline that I don't think we're going to see until next week involving Stacy and her boyfriend TJ, which, I'm hearing the streets are talking about that relationship. I recommend the first part of the Potomac Reunion, but I'm really looking forward to the second part. But it was great. So what I wanted to talk about right now, though, I mean, first off, all the business. If you like the show, consider giving it 5 stars. Okay, I think that's all the business. What I wanted to talk about is Saturday Night Live. And I say that realizing that a lot of people don't watch Saturday Night Live, and I've talked about it, I guess, semi-frequently here, not in terms of recapping the show, but it's one of those pop culture kind of juggernauts that has obviously been there now for 50 years. And I have known SNL just because my dad would have me watch it with him when I was a kid. And so that kind of habit stuck. And everybody has like their decade or their cast, like mine was like Farley and Sandler and David Spade and Chris Rock, kind of these greats. But I've watched every single episode of SNL. Like I even went back to the seasons when, I was way too little to know what was going on to watch old episodes. And I'm a fairly decent student at SNL knowledge. And it's really interesting because as you get older, the fascinating thing about the show, I've always said that it's not that humorous to me. Like, there'll be certain things on Weekend Update that I'll like, or maybe a cold open or a guest monologue. But sometimes you're like, it didn't hit. But you kind of have that hope that it hit for someone, maybe like a different age group. Like, oh, I hope teenagers like this, like, but I'm not. But what you find as you get older, or at least I do, is I'm just more fascinated in how the show itself is put together. That's the thing where you're like, it is kind of just a wonder to behold how this happens, and how Lorne Michaels, the producer who initially started SNL and is still with the show, even though he had a 5-year period, I believe around 1980. And during those years, you had Eddie Murphy, Billy Crystal, and then he came back to the show and has been with it ever since. And this dude has launched careers of so many just superstars, juggernauts, men and women, the best in comedy, or the best that comedy has to offer. And some of these people have turned out just to be damn good actors. I mean, Adam Sandler, for as funny as he is, he's such an amazing actor. Watch Uncut Gems, watch Punch Drunk Love. Eddie Murphy, one of the most talented people to ever grace any sort of screen comedically, but also the man can act his ass off. That dude has not gotten his due in terms of just acting. I mean, he was almost. I really wanted him to win the Oscar. What was it? Was it for Dreamgirls? He's done so many fantastic performances. But you think about all of the careers that this man, Lorne Michaels, has launched. And there was this great 4-part docu-series on Peacock that I've talked about on the show before that came out this year in celebration of the 50th, where it went through all their auditions and, how the show gets put together every week. And it really is this just machine. And it seems like a place where especially the performers and the writers have so much anxiety. There was even a sketch tonight in SNL 50 that the Lonely Island guys, Andy Samberg and Jacoma and the guys that do the Lonely Island, it was a song about anxiety, about all of the SNL performers just dealing with deep anxiety and depression because the show does that to you. These people will pull all-nighters still. They're still doing it the exact same way that the show was put together in 1976, where on Monday, a guest will come in, they'll pitch some sketch ideas. They'll start writing. Tuesdays, like you show up and you just work throughout the night. Wednesday is a table read where they'll read like 80 or 90 sketches and pare it down to like 15 or I'm not getting the numbers correct, but and then Thursday they start rehearsing and shooting and all of this stuff leading up to Saturday. You have the dress rehearsal performance and then the live from New York performance at 11:30 p.m. And that's how they always do it. They could do it in a more efficient way, but I think there's just something so I think it's so set in stone and it's romantic a little bit that there's certain things that just don't change these days. And I guess the question is, and I wish I could just do a whole podcast about SNL. And by the way, my dream is to interview somebody that has worked on SNL, and I have not tried nearly hard enough. So if anybody knows anybody that works on SNL or for SNL or worked on SNL or anybody, if a friend of a friend knows a cast member, past or present, please reach out. Like, I would love to interview people that have worked on SNL, especially this year out of all years. Um, but it'll be interesting because Lorne Michaels, he's 80 years old, I believe. And he's still cooking. But at the same time, there's that conversation going of who will take over the reins. And I think initially a lot of people were saying Tina Fey. And that would be very interesting. But Tina obviously has a family. She's, done 30 Rock, SNL. She really is brilliant. And I would be interested to see what changes, if any, she would make to SNL. In fact, she pops up in one of the documentaries saying that, man, when she was there, it was brutal sometimes, the competition, and it actually kind of fueled the work. It made the work better to have a little fear, to like kind of look behind your back. And she says, I wish with the current cast, they had a little bit more of that. She said something to that effect. And I just thought, damn, Tina Fey don't mess around. And potentially she would rule with an iron fist. So you would love that. I would also love to see a woman in charge. And to me, Tina Fey is funnier than most men out there. So that would be an interesting choice, but we'll see. But it is just such an institution. And I think for a lot of people like me, it just is such a part of your every week habit. It was part of my family's thing, and so it became my thing, and it is just stuck. And like I said, I'm just fixated. In fact, I was just pulled this book that this Live from New York, the completely uncensored history of Saturday Night Live, as told by its stars, writers, and guests, written by James Andrew Miller and Tom Shales. I've read this a couple of times now, and this is a expanded edition that they released for SNL's 40th season 10 years ago. But I highly recommend it if you're interested in the show, because it's just an oral history where all these interviews are done with like every cast member, and they break it down through every season and really kind of explain why most people think Chevy Chase is an asshole. But in terms of pop culture, it is a zenith. It is a touchstone. And, tonight they did the sketch kind of portion of it, and it turned out to be like 3.5 hours long. There was an hour red carpet, so I guess that would make it 4.5. So I've pretty much spent my whole Sunday with SNL. But Friday, they had an SNL homecoming, which was just a concert celebrating the music of Saturday Night Live. And this is where you can even put like the sketches away and just talk about how powerful the show is in terms of music selection. How many music careers, now, you'll see music stars that are already kind of pretty much there, huge stars, but they've also broken a lot of stars in terms of like breaking them to a mainstream audience. Now, you're going to make fun of me, but one of those bands is one of my favorites, Counting Crows. Now, Adam Duritz, the lead singer of Counting Crows, goes on record and saying August and Everything After, their first album, like when it got released, nobody listened to it. It was at the bottom of the charts. I don't even know if it was charting. And then finally, they did, like, I believe it was like a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They had to fill in last minute to induct Van Morrison, I believe, or something. But it led to them getting, and they were with Geffen Records, which David Geffen, huge in the industry. So they had good representation, and they somehow managed to get a slot on SNL. They managed to get a slot on SNL. And I believe they did Round Here, which is a very long, dramatic song, and I'm not sure if they did Mr. Jones or not, but the Round Here one, he did it, and they said from that SNL performance, that is what launched that album. It had been out for a minute, and so after that SNL performance, people were like, what the fuck is this? And each week that album grew. It just kept climbing the charts based on that SNL performance, which I thought was so interesting. Of it can really just help somebody new out there in the industry. But the SNL Homecoming concert, I so recommend it. It's streaming on Peacock. It is also 3.5 hours long. And Rebecca and I, it was Valentine's Day. We went out, we did our thing. And then I said, hey, let's watch a musical performance or two. But I didn't really, like a lot of those music performance shows, especially when they have so many musicians, it's a bit of a mess. And so I didn't really expect much from it at all. And it turned out to be fantastic. It like hit all musical genres. Like even the things that I didn't think I was going to like, I ended up loving. It was a blast from the past. It was like now, it was the future. It hit it all. It also had some really funny flippin' sketches, including Will Ferrell and Anna Gasteyer doing their what are they? The school teachers that sing together, and they did a medley of songs, including Kendrick's "Hit 'Em Up," and it is just. I gotta tell you, Anna Gasteyer, I forgot how damn talented she is. Will Ferrell, always so flippin' funny. Just makes. This man is just pure comedy, but you can just tell it comes from his soul. There is no ego involved with Will Ferrell's comedy, if that makes sense. But Anna Gasteyer, you forget how damn talented she was. And I think like people like that really won this weekend in terms of like, oh yeah, I forgot about her. God, she's so talented. Like there are so many strong people in SNL that you forget about that have gone on to do projects, and some bigger, some smaller, but you're like, man, there is a reason why they're there. So if you don't mind, I wanted to take you through that musical performance, and then we'll talk a little bit about tonight's, and then we'll get to Sophie, okay? I know, just let me geek out for a little bit, because these are those moments. But okay, before we do that, you know what pissed me off, though, a little bit? So tonight at the SNL 50 live show, and they did it at Studio 8H at 30 Rockefeller Center, is every celebrity, like I wish there was a camera just for the crowd, because there were so many celebrities in the crowd, including Jack Nicholson, who is like JD Salinger at this point, the man just doesn't come out for anything. He's rarely even seen at Lakers games anymore. And he was there. I mean, Keith Richards was there, for the love of God. Paul McCartney did a performance. But the people that pissed me off is Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively showed up. Now, listen, I'm still waiting for Blake Lively's filing, which, by the way, we're due for another episode because they just subpoenaed Justin Baldoni's texts and phone records. And I believe his lawyers are fighting that right now. So I thought that was an interesting development. But there's been so many. But they showed up on the red carpet. And Ryan Reynolds did a little bit in the audience for a bit between like Tina Fey and Amy Poehler for an audience question. And I just didn't like, I see them now all the time on my feed, and I see so many people talking about them that I just kind of wanted to enjoy my stupid little SNL show without any kind of Blake or Justin. I think I would have said the same thing if Baldoni was there. I just didn't want that because I already saw, I mean, I was like, oh shit, people are going to not even pay attention to the show because they're so busy talking about the Lively Baldoni thing. But it was weird because I was just like, why show up to this? I know, like, dude, they're like showing up at more events and acting kind of like everything's kosher. And Ryan Reynolds' bit in the show was Amy and Tina was like, oh, hey, what was the bit? They were like, how's it going? And he was like, good. Why? Have you heard something? And it got like a light applause, light laughter. And there was a shot of Steven Spielberg. He was like, he was nervously laughing. It seems like, because all the other people in that question segment got way more applause and laughs than Ryan Reynolds, which I just thought, man, he knows. They know they're taking a hit, but they're doing it just to, I guess, keep their faces out there. But I just wouldn't want to bring that energy to this celebration. But what do I know? It was just something that I thought, Anyways, I wanted to bring that up before we actually get to the good stuff, which are the musical performances. And I always say this, isn't it, for me, and I think maybe this is just me getting older, is that it's just so much more exciting to love something than to actively hate something. And I think that musical thing just surprised me on Friday night, and I loved it, and I watched all 3+ hours. And it's one of those things on Peacock where you can fast forward if you're not feeling something, but I think you're going to be surprised. Like, I recommended it to my dad. I recommended it to as many people as I could the next day. So let's go through some of the performances. So it was at Radio City Music Hall Friday night. I would have killed to have been there. Oh my God. I saw some influencers that were there, some people that I know actually. Like Amanda Not Skinny Not Fat was there, and I was like, oh my God. For some of these, like, I don't get super jealous about like Bravo events or something that I'm not at, but man, sometimes you do get, I was a little jealous about the SNL thing just because I'm like, to me, even if the show is not super funny or I find it super funny, there is still something so magical about it to me. So they started with Jimmy Fallon coming out and doing the, I think of Ray and Dave, the song Soul Man, which is famous for the Blues Brothers reinterpreted it for the movie and the show, Dan Aykroyd and Belushi. And Jimmy Fallon did it in like, the Wayfarers and the black suit and black tie and the hat. And he was giving it all, so much so that he really had a hard time introing the show because his breath was like, but he gave it everything. And then they cut to they had these really interesting pairings. So they paired Miley Cyrus with Brittany Howard, and she has a couple great solo albums, but she might be best known for her work with the Alabama Shakes, which is a great band that actually just reunited, and they're going back on tour this year. So they did Crazy Little Thing Called Love, the Freddie Mercury song, the Queen song. And then Miley Cyrus did Flowers. Bad Bunny did 2 songs, DTMF being one of them. He was great. The audience loved him. And Bill Murray came out and did his lounge singer bit. And he sang a song called You're All I Need to Get By. And his backup dancers were Anna Gasteyer, Maya Rudolph, and Cecily Strong. That was great because there was interspersed comedy bits in it. And then Eddie Vedder came out and did a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers song called The Waiting. The waiting is the hardest part. And Eddie Vedder, that's such a great tribute to Tom Petty, who had been SNL music guest a handful of times. One of those times, by the way, was after Kurt Cobain had passed. He asked Dave Grohl to play drums on, I think, when he was on for the Wildflowers album. And Dave Grohl got asked to join Tom Petty's band after that, and he turned it down to do Foo Fighters instead. And he talks about this of being like, oh my God, Tom Petty is just a hero of mine, but I don't feel like it's my place to be the drummer in his band. But he plays on SNL with Tom Petty. So Tom Petty, obviously this was a tribute to him. Eddie Vedder did it great. And then he did a little tip of the hat to Elvis Costello, who, when he came on, started the song a certain way before he went into Radio, I believe. But he did a Pearl Jam song called Corduroy, which I love, and he killed it. The waiting drove me mad. Oh God, I'm missing the best part. Is that the Roots were the backing band for the whole night. The Roots. I mean, Questlove, obviously, we know with the drums, but what an amazing backup band. They do, they're Jimmy Fallon's house band at The Tonight Show, but my God, those guys are talented. So I would love to see a documentary just on how they pieced this night together, and I have a feeling Questlove was a big part of it. So Eddie Vedder did that, and then Tracy Morgan, the comedian from SNL, came out, and he did his Astronaut Jones theme song, like, I'm going to space, man. And it was super funny and silly. And then, you guys, oh my God, my 90s kid heart, the B-52s came out, and they did Love Shack. Like my Lisa Barlow, Tin Roof, Rusted. I always say that during my Lisa Barlow imitation, which is horrible, but I always do that because the last line of Love Shack is Tin Roof, Rusted, Love Shack, baby, Love Shack. And they killed it, man. The B-52s they sounded amazing, and they got to all be in their 70s. I think they're a band, they're out of Athens, Georgia, just like REM was. And they killed it. And they had like Fred Armisen out there with them. Fred Armisen was on the drums, I believe, for them. And Sarah Squirm and Bowen Yang came out to do like background dance. And they had a lobster because they do Rock Lobster. They didn't sing Rock Lobster, but Love Shack was a blast. Andy Cohen was there with Anderson Cooper, and I know he's a huge B-52s fan. And it was exciting to see how many stars in the audience there were. Paul Rudd looked like he was living his best. Paul Rudd was like front row, and this was another jealous moment where I was like, dude, I don't even need to have Paul Rudd's good looks. I just want to like be like that happy. Like he looked so happy. Like everybody was losing their minds, it looked like, in that audience. And then the Backstreet Boys came out, which I talked with Sophie, and everybody was freaking out, like especially the female SNL cast members in the audience. I could tell they were losing it. Brian Luttrell has some issues with his voice, it seems. That's all I'll say, but it was still cool. And then fucking Devo. Are you kidding me? Devo came out and they did Uncontrollable Urge, which is yeah. They're a punk band from the 70s and 80s. And I saw them in concert for the first time about a year and a half ago with my buddy Tug. And it was just awesome. And it was so great to see them. And I believe Fred Armisen, who, SNL legend cast member, but also a great musician in his own right, was out with them as well. And then we had a Lonely Island medley. And the Lonely Island guys, they did all of those amazing videos in, I guess, the early aughts. Like Lazy Sunday, Dick in a Box. And so they just did this whole medley. So it started with Andy Samberg and Lady Gaga, and she started playing Shallow, and I was like, and he started doing the Bradley Cooper part, and he was horribly off key, and he was like, oh, this isn't good, is it? This isn't good. And then they're like, let's do something else. And she started on the piano playing Dick in a Box. It's my dick in a box. And she killed it. He killed it. And this started a medley of some of their insane songs from their time on SNL. So you had, what was it? You had Lazy Sunday, and Chris Parnell came out and did his bit of we're going to see Narnia. By the way, I know I sound like a madman right now, but I'm just trying to remember all of the little pieces. And Eddie Vedder, they even had a pirate ship come out. It was so well choreographed. T-Pain was a part of it. Eddie Vedder was he was steering. He was the captain of the pirate ship. Bad Bunny was a part of this as well. And it was so well done. It was so flippin' good. And usually you're just like, these things are such a mess. And this whole evening seemed so seamless. And then after this, we had the one and only Lauryn Hill from the Fugees, but they just said, "Oh, here's Lauryn Hill," but it turned out to be like a mini Fugees reunion because Wyclef Jean was out there, and they did "Killing Me Softly." They did. I mean, it was great. Now, I have seen Lauryn Hill a couple of times in my life, and the couple of times I've seen her, she's always been so damn late taking stage that I was like, how are they going to even give her like a set time? Because she's not going to show up. But she was perfect. It was awesome. The crowd was loving it. And this is when you had the Will Ferrell and Anna Gasteyer sketch after this. They played the Culps. So it was the Culps medley, killed it. Then you had Jelly Roll coming out to kind of give it a little more country, a little bit of country in there. But he did Johnny Cash songs. He did I Walk the Line, Ring of Fire. And then you had Brandy Carlisle come out, and she's another one also that has a deep appreciation for just music in general. She's the one that got Joni Mitchell kind of back on stage. She does a lot of work with Elton John, and she seems to have a real kinship with these amazing performers, but she herself is an amazing performer, and she came out and did one of her amazing songs, The Joke. And then, not my favorite, but I actually turned out to like them, is Mumford and Sons came out. Mumford and Sons, and they did I Will Wait, which is one of their hits from back in the day. And then they did one of my favorite Simon and Garfunkel songs, The Boxer. Like, I am just a boxer, my story's seldom told. And it was so, I had just finished reading this book about Paul Simon last week, which I always highly recommend. I know this is like a pop culture show where we're talking about things of like the present, but always research the past. Always dig in. If there's a song that you like, go find it on Spotify. Like go like if it's the 1960s, 1950s, 1970s, go find out all about it. Like let it lead you down a rabbit hole because you're going to have so much fun in the exploration of those little sidetrack adventures, right? Like whether it be Bob Dylan, if you started listening to Bob Dylan because you saw Timothy Chalamet in A Complete Unknown, follow that path down the line because you're going to discover so many amazing things when you go looking for songs. So the Boxer, they did that, great. And then Snoop Dogg came out, Snoop Dogg, Gin and Juice. And then this was interesting, kind of another tribute to Tom Petty. They did Last Dance with Mary Jane, one of his songs with the Heartbreakers, and Jelly Roll came out with him for that. And then after that, now this was just this was interesting because Jimmy Fallon introduced it as David Byrne and St. Vincent, but it turned out to be Arcade Fire, the band, David Byrne, St. Vincent, and the Preservation Hall Jazz Band from New Orleans. And they did David Bowie's Heroes song, which is, rest in peace, David Bowie. And it was just like a glorious mess of artistry on the stage. And then Arcade Fire did their song Wake Up, which is just an anthem at this point. And it was so cool to see David Byrne and St. Vincent singing along. And that was true. I was like, man, you guys, like, I love David Byrne. I love the Talking Heads. I love St. Vincent. It was just, my heart was so full watching this. And then you guys, oh my God, then fucking Bonnie Raitt comes out. Bonnie flippin' Raitt. Now, Bonnie Raitt, I always tell you guys this. You're usually, when you're a kid, you're at the mercy of the albums that your parents have. Now, she had one of, I think, her most popular albums was an album, was it 1989, 88, 90, somewhere around there, called Nick of Time. And it had like so many hits. Like this thing was selling buco bananas. I'm just making up words at this point. But it was one of the albums, one of the CDs my dad had. So I listened to this thing. And there is a song called I Can't Make You Love Me, which as a kid, I used to listen to. And I would pretend, this is how sick I was and am. I would pretend that I was in a breakup and this was my breakup song. Did not have a girlfriend at the time. But I would sit there and go, I can feel this song. As a kid, I could feel the pain of this song. Like, I can make you love me if you don't. It's just such a beautiful song. So she starts with a thing called Love. Let me tell you about this thing called love. And she killed it. And she's got to be in her like 76, 77. She looked amazing. Her voice sounded amazing. These people were all singing live. And she's so good on the slide guitar. And I was just blown away. And Chris Martin from Coldplay, he then came out and played. I was like, no, please, you're going to play it? She fucking played I Can't Make You Love Me. And Chris Martin on piano. And thank God. Like, I like Chris Martin as a singer with Coldplay. Coldplay, I'm like hit or miss on. But he just played the piano beautifully. He didn't even provide backing vocals. Just played the song beautifully. And I was in tears. Bonnie Raitt, man, I was in tears. Also, if you want, go check out. I think you can find this on YouTube. Bon Iver. His name's Justin Vernon, but his band's Bon Iver, which they just announced a new album that's coming out in April last week, which I'm so excited for. But Bon Iver does an amazing cover of "I Can't Make You Love Me." But Bonnie Raitt sang this, and they did shots of the crowd. You guys, Billy Crystal almost seemed like he was in tears. That was the coolest thing of watching like the audience like just be so into it. And so we kept watching it. We were like, yeah, let's watch another one. We watched the whole damn thing. And then I think it was Adam Sandler came out to introduce like, hey buddy, hey, hey, it's me, the Sandman. Hey man, post Nirvana. And he introduced Post Malone with the remaining members of Nirvana. So you had Dave Grohl, you had Chris Novoselic, and Pat Smear. You had them play, and with Post Malone, who did a really decent job because Kurt Cobain sang with such a guttural. It was like weird. He had this guttural animal tone, but at the same time was so good at melody. Like it was like he could thrash his voice, but in a melodic way. And Post Malone like didn't necessarily have that. Like he did good. He did good. It was actually pretty exciting, and they did. Smells Like Teen Spirit, but I could have heard another one from them. I was like, oh man. And it was great. Dave Grohl came out after the year he's had, being a very bad man to his wife, had a child with another woman. But it was good to see him out there. He was a big part of SNL over the years musically as well. And then it gets fucking crazy, you guys. So there's this dance artist. Her name's Robin. I believe she's Swedish, if I'm not mistaken. Robyn. And I've seen her a couple of times through the years, and she's just amazing. And her big song, the one that everybody I think knows, is Dancing on My Own. And so she comes out and she does that, but David Byrne comes out from Talking Heads again, and they sing it as a duet. And they're just like, like it is. I was elevated out of my body. Like it was so cool. And then this was just like, this was made for me. They did a cover of the Talking Heads song, This Must Be the Place. And David Byrne obviously was in the Talking Heads, but Robin sang it with him. And I just couldn't have been happier. Whoever put this together, like this wasn't Lorne, because I think Lorne like is up on things musically, but Lorne is like over the years, like his best friends are like Paul Simon. Like I know, the people he hangs out with. It is those 70s crew. Like he's buddies with McCartney. He's buddies with like, Mick Jagger and Keith and all of these guys. But like whoever, I think it's Questlove that put this together. It was just amazing. So that happened and I left my body. And then all of a sudden you guys, Cher comes out. Cher and does her song from the 90s, If I Could Turn Back Time. And I shit you not, I think she can turn back time. She has taken the substance. She has a flatter stomach than I ever will have in my life. She looked amazing, sounded amazing, like has no business having the voice that she still has. And this is another one that they would pan to the audience. John Hamm was losing his damn mind. And then they had a shot of Kevin Costner and he had his like hands behind his head, kind of like you could almost hear what he was thinking of, just like, we're all getting older, but this is just so damn beautiful. Isn't life beautiful? Like that's what I was reading from his expression. It was like this wistfulness that I just loved. Also in the audience, Martin Short was sitting next to Meryl Streep. They're fucking dating, and I knew it. There's like shots of them holding hands that night. They still are not official, but they were seated next to each other, and there was a great bit during the show where Meryl Streep flipped off the cameras. You probably saw that. And then Lady Gaga came out, and she did just an amazing rendition of "Shallow." You always forget, because she has such great pop songs, that she has one of the strongest voices in the world, and she just seems so at ease with performing. You're just like, damn, you're just so committed and you have the chops. Like you have like, like you're not like Paul McCartney on tonight's SNL performance at the very end. His voice, man, he started with Golden Slumbers and it was hard. It was hard. And also Paul Simon that opened tonight's show on NBC. They played Homeward Bound with Sabrina Carpenter. He was having a hard time with his voice. It's hard at your instrument. As you get older, your instrument wears down. But Lady Gaga, man, in the prime. And then to round the whole evening out, you had Jack White come out, and he played a Neil Young famous song, "Rockin' in the Free World," like "Keep on rocking in the free world," which I can't believe Eddie Vedder didn't come out for, because he's always covered that song with Pearl Jam. But then Jack White did one of, he did Seven Nation Army with the White Stripes, which they are potentially going to be nominated, or they are nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We'll see if they get in. And that was the show. It was so glorious. I'm so glad that it is going to. I'm so glad it is going to be out there on streaming forever, so I can convince more people to watch it over the years. It was just magical. I felt like I just discovered a little piece of gold. Now tonight we had the SNL 50, the anniversary special, and I talk a little bit about it with Sophie this afternoon, because the writers' room, they brought back like Tina Fey, John Mulaney, and all of these great, amazing people like Seth Meyers, Paula Pell, to like write on this special. And it was one of those things that I thought it was good. Like, I remember as a kid watching the 25th anniversary SNL special, and I think it was just probably I was younger. I found it to be hysterical. I thought every bit. I just remember that 25th anniversary special like the back of my hand. Now, the 40th anniversary, 10 years ago, I remember that as well. I remember they did a Wayne's World, which I was hoping they would do another Wayne's World tonight. Dana Carvey, I didn't see him there, actually, which was interesting because he played Biden during this season of SNL, and he was great at it. But Mike Migers came back and did Coffee Talk amongst yourselves. He did his Linda Richmond character, which was so great to see him. But it was great. It was, obviously long. And there was like ups and downs. There was peaks and valleys, like all Saturday Night Live shows, peaks and valleys. But there was a lot of, Eddie Murphy killed it. They did Black Jeopardy, and he did an impression of Tracy Morgan next to Tracy Morgan. And he was just so damn good at it. So funny. I thought that Eddie Murphy's performance in that in particular was amazing. Steve Martin did the opening monologue. And this guy, once again, like I was talking about Lady Gaga, of just like the instrument is so pure. Steve Martin his instrument is just still so pure. He is 80 years old now, and you just can't tell. Funnier than most, 20-year-olds. Like 20-year-olds at the top of their game will never be as funny as 80-year-old Steve Martin. And some of the jokes I've heard before, I've heard him do in his act with Martin Short, but he just sells them. It's just so precise, the jokes. And they did a good DEI joke about taking Martin Short back to Canada, which I thought was good, and a good comment on the times without being really heavy-handed. But I thought it was just good. It was great starting the show that way with Steve Martin. Martin Short popped out for that. There was a couple of cameos during that. And then the show was off, and you had video clips and things like that with actually like new sketches. So you had, what's the big character now? Fernando? What's the guy? Marcelo Hernandez. What's the guy? This is Watch Me Have a Stroke on this show right now. I'm on his website right now. Wow, he's got a nice Good for him. He's got a very nice website. He's the one, Marcelo Hernandez. He's the cast member of SNL, but he's also friends with Paige DeSorbo. And this was the one people initially were saying that he was the one with Paige, and it turned out to not be him at all. And he got a good laugh at it. But I know you guys are all saying the name of the character. Domingo, Domingo. So they did the viral Domingo character, and Sabrina Carpenter came out for the wedding speech, sketch. They did that again. Martin Short was in it, and Molly Sweeney. Why am I forgetting everybody's name all of a sudden? Molly Shannon. Sorry, guys. I don't know what's wrong. I'm like forgetting names right and left. God, what is going on with me? Anyways, Molly Shannon was in that sketch as well. So they would have like these sketches that were like, I think the kids know, like Domingo. And then they had like John Mulaney wrote a good like musical sketch number. They had a great Weekend Update. Seth Meyers came out. You had Bill Murray do a bit. It was kind of littered with cameos. But I'm telling you, the cameras I just wanted to watch the audience, because that whole studio was just filled with megastars. like I said, Paul Simon opened with Homeward Bound, which Paul Simon, huge part of, especially those earlier seasons of SNL, where he was like a musical guest, I believe, on the second episode of SNL. Now, today I also watched the Jason Reitman film called Saturday Night, which is streaming on Netflix now, and a movie came out last year, and there was a little bit of Oscar buzz around it, and I finally watched it today. And it's one of those things. It's like movies that are about like an institution are really hard because what they usually do is they jam like every little moment about the show, they'll jam it in like an hour and 45-minute movie. And you just know it didn't happen that way. And it's like really good. Like all the actors are good and you can tell the details are there. But sometimes you're just like, they weren't fucking like, I don't know. Just some of it was just like, oh, they want you to be like, I remember that thing, but it all didn't happen because it takes place 90 minutes before they go live for the first night on Saturday Night Live in 1976, and it's better. It was made really well. It just I thought it was going to be, I don't know, more enjoyable. Is that the word? Anyways, go stream it on Netflix. See for yourself. I mean, the cast is really good. Some really good turns in there. I don't know, but overall, I was kind of left a little empty. But tonight, the other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of the sketch was that Tom Hanks. I thought this was really interesting. Here it is. Tom Hanks did a in memoriam segment, and you thought it was going to be like a tearjerker, and like Farley and Hartman and all these people who have left us, Norm Macdonald, Gilda Radner, but it turned out to be a segment where it turned out to be in memoriam for like things that they got wrong through the years. Like, like things like jokes that didn't land well or jokes that don't play well now, which kind of shows you the ever changing landscape of comedy in general. So this would like give you examples of things that they did that would be horrifying to look on now. Like, abuse of ethnic stereotypes, sexual harassment, underage sexual harassment. You had a bit with Adrian Brody who came out in notorious fake dreadlocks and introduced a band with like a horrible accent. They played that clip. They had the one with Mike Myers in a tub with Macaulay Culkin back in the day, which was a yikes moment. You had animal cruelty, Will Ferrell shaming a dog in a classic commercial parody. You had body shaming, multiple instances with Chris Farley and that Chippendales sketch with Patrick Swayze, which, I mean, that to me, as a kid, I busted out laughing. Like Farley was just so good. Anyways, but that is considered body shaming to a degree. You also had slut shaming in the first season of the show. Dan Aykroyd to Jane Curtin, "Jane, you ignorant slut." That was an actual line that you might not be able to get away with that today. The gay panic years. Ableism, sexism, child molestation. You had Alec Baldwin as a Boy Scout leader sleeping in a sleeping bag with Adam Sandler's Boy Scout. Then there was a montage of questionable guests like O.J. Simpson, R. Kelly, Diddy, and use of racial slurs. And I thought this was such an interesting thing to leave in the show or to even put in the show in the first place. But I thought it was kind of important to show that things change over time. And sometimes that's okay. What we once found funny, we might not find funny anymore. And it doesn't mean like we have to be like things evolve and we don't have to feel threatened by that. We can acknowledge that it existed. We can sometimes laugh at ourselves and also grow from certain moments. But I thought it was an interesting thing to leave in the show because I was like, oh, that's really kind of walking that line of, do we want to really highlight sometimes when we got it wrong? But they did. And I thought it was interesting. So overall, listen, we're 43 minutes in. Thank you for allowing me to geek out about SNL. So, it is just such a part of my history. I wanted to talk about it. I should have just made this its own show. But whatever, you guys. Anyways, happy Monday. Here she is, the one, the only, Sophie Ross. We talk about a lot of things, and it's a lot of fun. And I hope you enjoy it. Happy Monday.